Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. I'm your host today, Michael Perry, and I'm joined today by Jenna Moore. Say hi, Jenna.
Hey everyone.
So Jenna is the owner and creator of Summit Performance Nutrition, and I've had a lot of discussions with you for a couple of years now about nutrition. You're my go-to gal when it comes to this stuff, and it's just the insights and wisdom you have in this field is phenomenal, and I love how this last year, as I've been diving into podcasting, learning more about spirituality and healing, I'm seeing almost a resonance with the work you're doing and just how conscious you are, how conscious your work is centered around awareness and personal development. It's phenomenal.
I appreciate
So tell everybody about yourself. What are your interests? What are your hobbies? What are your passions? What got you into nutrition?
I appreciate that so much, Michael. Yeah, it's such an honor and pleasure to be here with you. It's so fun. And when you know and you see people who are, we're going to probably use this word more, but in alignment, right, with what they're meant to be doing
Yeah.
in life and living their best life, it's really fun to gravitate and use that momentum to create even more new and beautiful things. So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's exciting to be here. And Summit Performance Nutrition is my private practice. I started that, 8 years ago almost. I got really lucky, though, as I was telling you earlier. I was in school for nutrition and ended up landing a job for the Denver Nuggets strength coach right out of school. So I got propelled into this professional sports nutrition world in Denver with somebody who had no experience, right? And so
Yeah.
I was so blessed because I got to work with some really elite, brilliant nutritionists in the field, learn from a way that I don't think a lot of dietitians get to learn from it, from a very holistic place. Got, even more lucky having two parents as physicians who taught me to really fall in love with the field of literature and research. And so I don't read books, I read research, and I just love it because I know a lot about nutrition. I don't know a lot about a lot of things, but I know a lot about nutrition. So, I'll just a brief about me. I grew up in a family who wasn't very nutrition conscientious. You may or may not know this, but the average physician receives less than 15 hours of nutrition education in their entire medical school career. So that's
Oh,
what I
that's crazy.
amazing. Yeah, it's so sad. And so that's what I do in a week in my undergrad for nutrition. And then I went on to receive my board certified specialty as a sports dietitian. So again, more research and school and studying and boards. So I grew up in a family that didn't know anything about nutrition, became obese right out of high school into college, didn't like exercise, didn't like eating healthy. Kind of decided I was going to go to school to learn about nutrition. And if I could help myself, I thought that I could help others. And so went to school for nutrition, fell madly in love with climbing. I discovered the Manitou Incline, and I just became obsessed. I went and climbed that mountain now probably thousands of times, and I discovered the 14ers, climbed all the 14ers, just fell in love with being outside and moving my body. And then, went on to get my RYT as a yoga instructor. I think that it's a constant practice, and it's an adventurous, wonderful, fun practice to be involved with nutrition in your body. And I think that as I go on this journey, I see others going on the same, and it's really a beautiful thing to witness such a experience as falling in love with healthy as I do every day.
Yeah. Well, I think something you said there that is just so powerful to me that I don't think I've fully wrapped my head around. So I heard a quote a long time ago saying that the magic you are looking for is in the work you're avoiding. And I've reflected so much on this quote because I do believe that it's the areas we avoid and struggle the most are where we're going to find our passion and our drive. For me, my big focus in my career, in school, is attachment theory because I've always struggled with attachment issues. And so going through my whole dark night I went through when I was going through it a couple years ago really opened my eyes to this whole attachment theory and learning about myself and shadow work and really took me down this path of like, this is what I want to do with my life. And one thing I love that you brought up is how you were saying you struggled with obesity coming out of high school, going into college. You really hated the idea of exercise. And that hits me because I was obese in high school. I was big. I hated exercise. I liked gym a little bit, but it was more for the sports than it was for the activity. And I discovered hiking. And I lost so much weight hiking every day because it became my passion. But I wonder how much exercise is one of those molehills that become a mountain as we get away from it. But once we start pursuing it, especially exercise that is aligned with what we want, whether it's nature, sports, whatever it is, that would catapult us into being more driven to exercise, even if we don't think about it like that.
Oh, I love what you're saying, Michael. I tell my clients, you need to find something that you love so much that you want to do it every day for the rest of your life, not have to. You know what I mean? It's that
Yep, yep.
absolutely. So that's why I say have multiple hobbies. If you're getting bored of being on the treadmill at the gym every day, well, it's probably because we need something a little more stimulating and mix it up and do something different and community. You're so right. Like, can we find different reasons to love different things that move our body? Absolutely. I love what you're saying. I completely agree.
So, what would your advice be for people that, because I see a lot of this, especially as we're getting older, and I'm seeing people in my friend group, my peers, who just, they're stuck. They have no momentum in any direction here. What would your advice be for them to start taking steps in life to discovering these passions or these movements that would be more enjoyable than the dread they make it in their heads?
I love what you're saying. It's so funny. Being a nutritionist, I'm kind of obsessed with energy, right? Like, and
Yeah.
food is fuel, but like our metabolism is what makes turns it into energy, and that causes movement. And so, a little bit of an obsession with energy and energy. Let's call it energy bending. I'll be a little nerdy here for a second. Let's talk about energy
I'll
bending.
take it.
Okay, love it. So when we're trying to bend our energy in a different way, like if we're stagnant, if we're stuck, if we're feeling hopeless because we've tried diets over and over again, the whole purpose of looking at insanity is realizing that it's the exact same motions over and over that we're doing. The average human being actually has what is it, like 10,000 thoughts a day, and 70% of them are the same ones from the day before. That's insane. And so if we're having all these similar thoughts, it's very likely that we're going to have similar thoughts around our nutrition and our movement unless we stimulate new thought. And so what I'm
Yes.
telling people is if we're trying to find a way to get unstuck, we need to introduce something new. And it doesn't have to be anything that's going to, be effective for the rest of our life or be epiphanic. It just needs to be new ideas, new thought. We're just trying to get that movement of that energy in a different place so that we can hopefully provide a new momentum for ourselves that propels us in a different way that could lead to success in a less resistant state. So
Right.
I don't know if that makes any sense to anyone.
No, that makes, I think that is so beautifully put, because I think so many people where they get trapped, and this was my big thing for most of my adult life, is I kept wanting to just jump into this new me. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be in shape. I wanted to do all these things, but I never met myself where I was at. And, Atomic Habits, have you read that book? Oh my God, I had a hunch. I love how he talks about the micro shifts, how we have to have these 1 degree pivots. It's not the large changes we do in our life that lead to lasting change. It's the small little things we do. And I'm glad you brought up the thoughts, because neural pathways is something I think everyone needs educated on. And neural pathways, for anyone listening, is just, it's the systems in our brain that fire, and it's the automated thinking. It's what allows us to have the brain power to focus in on things around us. But these pathways in our minds can get stuck, can get some bad programming, and lead us down some really bad thought patterns. We talk about the ego on here a lot. We talk a lot about the inner critic. And it stems from these pathways just being ingrained over time without us really realizing it until it's too late. And
Go ahead, please. Sorry.
just to what you're saying is, if you do these small introductions, these little shifts, whether it's trying something new or experimenting with a new hobby, I mean, it's these little shifts that help start graining new pathways in there. I think about a dirt and plowing in a field, and you have these lines you've been digging forever. It's going to take some repetition to start digging more deep holes that go in the directions you want, but that's how irrigation works. If you want to get those pathways, you got to start small, and you got to work with yourself through it.
Yeah, I love that you use that metaphor. I talk to my clients a lot about like the roads, the highways, right? Like when we drive a
Yeah.
road, like that's a highway, right? And sometimes like if we don't drive it so much and it doesn't get paved, or maybe with there's these roads that we don't drive so much on a dirt road. Those are the roads and the pathways that we need to drive down because they haven't been driven down. And if we have bad, or let's call them, the self-destructive or negative thought patterns, and we drive down that road every single day like a highway, those are the ones that are going to have the easiest, flow to them, and those are the ones that we're going to be most likely to go towards. So the thing that I really work with my clients to do during every session is SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, achievable. It has to be achievable. And if you can create that self-efficacy, that sense of confidence to succeed by doing little things and then succeeding in that goal, and then acknowledging like how proud how proud you are of yourself for drinking, your goal of water 3 times a week, right? Or even just once a week for people who are really, really scared to do it. Then all of a sudden you've created this you've created this flow in your resistance instead of the resistance itself. And so then all of a sudden you can do bigger, better things. And it's just a journey, just a path, one step at a time.
No, I love that. You got me thinking, we had a discussion before we got onto this recording about dopamine. how much does dopamine play a part in creating new neural pathways?
Wow. Oh my gosh, what a great question. Because I mean, dopamine drives so much of our, I mean, like
Yeah, I
most,
guess let's dive into dopamine
yeah,
real quick because that's something we haven't touched much on here, but I think it's an important thing to learn about. So,
I love it. I love it. Yeah. So dopamine's our happy feeling chemical, right? It starts in a pathway called the mesolimbic pathway, which is in our nucleus accumbens, the very center of our brain, the part of the brain that's associated with pleasure and reward. And so when we have dopamine fire, we have receptors on our cells, right? And the dopamine, when it binds to our receptors, what happens is we feel pleasure and reward. And so there are natural things that release dopamine, like puppies and kittens and sunshine, and little natural things like that that release, let's call it the 20 dopamine to fit our 20 receptors. But when we have things like sugar and salt, and especially the combination of the two, and actually like it's pretty across the board, the mesolimbic pathway is responsive for drugs, sex, alcohol, sugar,
yeah.
salts, rock and roll, whatever you want to call it. But all of these very potent dopamine surgers. Now, instead of having, a couple natural dopamine, we have hundreds or thousands of dopamines, let's call it, just for example. And what happens is our receptors feel overstimulated, and so they recede. And so now, all of a sudden, instead of having 20 dopamine receptors, we have 2. And these receptors are dependent now on an external source to feed it more dopamine just for us to feel normal or homeostasis. And so that's where the cravings come in. If you're experiencing a craving in the afternoon because, your dopamine levels are dropping from, a long day, we crave something that's going to feed all these receptors. And the good news is we can regrow these receptors, but we have to create an environment where we're not surging our dopamine all the time like we are in the standard American diet with the standard American lifestyle. So, there's different ways and methods to do that. And I think that, more efforts toward, restoring that balance is so important. I'm working with a practitioner such as yourself or myself and the different ways to restore dopamine, because the good news is that there's lots of ways to stimulate dopamine. And there's also lots of ways to recede it. So I don't know. I think hopefully that's a good intro to dopamine for everybody out there.
No, I think you summarized it really good there. And man, there's so many tangents I want to go down with that, and I'm fighting and resisting it so much. But I mean, you look at addiction. That's something we're going to be covering for next month, Natural Wellness Month. I want to talk about addiction because it's such a misunderstood symptom. Because a lot of people see it as a disease. It's a symptom, and often this symptom is from our dopamine, from exactly what you're saying, from us needing more input just to feel normal. And I mean, what's your opinion on dopamine fasting? That's something I was really passionate about for a while, but man, is it like pulling teeth. So what is dopamine fasting? Then we'll go into what the benefits are.
Sure. So dopamine fasting is this idea where you essentially regrow your receptors and you kind of push the fast forward button on it, right? And so in order to grow your receptors faster, you just remove all stimulus from your environment, right? Like, so I've got like this light over here, that's stimulus. This computer obviously is stimulus. The phone is stimulus. Food is stimulus, right? Like getting up and walking around and viewing even just the walls on in your house is stimulus. And so some people will just, lock themselves in a dark closet and not do anything for 24 hours. And I think that's an effective way to do it, right? But is it an ideal way? And do we do that, once a week, once a month? Like where's that balance, right? Like the same thing with diets. Do we go on, and I'm a fan of fasting. I would, if you want to go on a 48, 30, 72-hour fast every week, like, and it works with your systems and you can get the nutrients right, like cool. Like if you just want to live life intensely, like go do live life intensely. But I think for the standard human being, we need to find like a sustainable, healthy balance with dopamine fasting. So you can do it in a lot of different ways, right? You can dopamine fast by, getting off of social media. You can dopamine fast by, like not eating sugar or salt for like a couple of days. Like, there's a lot of different ways to do it. But I think that at the end of the day, we just need to kind of understand that there's this long-term, management of the dopamine. Otherwise we end up roller coastering, right? And we go
Yeah.
back into dopamine because we were feel deprived and we binge and then we, you know what I mean? And it's like this crazy
Which
thing.
kind of is what happened to me. I mean, it's like the smartphone was the big one for me. I realized I was spending too much time on it, so I got a flip phone. Whenever I'd do my detoxes, I would just use the flip phone, and that'd be my way of like balancing out all the content I was digesting. But it's true, once I would be out of that, I would do good for a little bit, and then it'd just be the roller coaster right back on there. Like,
I've been there. I've been there with diets, right? Like I've been there with sugar. I've been there with, because like, the idea is like I'm eating too much sugar. I'm just going to take it all out, right? And I'm just going to deprive myself and restrict until I'm 20, 30 pounds lighter. And I mean, like it works, but it's interesting with fasting and diet specifically, like the more stimulus we give ourselves for weight loss and the faster we lose weight, the more our hormones gear up and trying to reverse that by like suppressing our fullness and increasing our hunger, like the more radical the weight loss we have. So you have to be really mindful to navigate that if you want to do weight loss radically. And so over time, if we do it slowly, it's a little more sustainable, right? I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer. I love doing like week-long fasts. I'm a fan of the intense. I'm a Scorpio. Maybe that's it. But I think that like at the end of the day, you have to find sustainability for yourself. So whatever that looks like, and as far as intensity and long term, I think that's the sweet spot for you. And that's about finding alignment and your life as a whole. There should be, I think, 1 billion different diets for 1 billion different people. They have to be personalized to you. And so when we take these textbook diets or these textbook dopamine fests and we expect them to work for ourselves, it's kind of like throwing a dart at a board blindfolded, spinning around in outer space.
No, I appreciate that feedback on that because you're absolutely right. We were just talking about how little shifts, not doing the big jump, and that is exactly what that is. So no, that's beautiful.
I love fasting. I do. I love radical extreme things. And I'm not against diets, right? Like I really have gained so much understanding of my own body by doing like 3 days of keto or 7 days of keto. But like there's a reason I believe that the word die is in diet because it's not meant to last. And when we expect these things to last, you know what I mean, in the long term, it just doesn't work that way. So do a deep dive into yourself with something like vegan or something like paleo or carnivore. I love it because it teaches us things about our body that we can take back into the real world when we find a new balance with our nutrition. You know what I mean? It's just a matter of understanding that, like, we are going to be a human that consumes everything because the moment we restrict is the moment we want that thing back.
Right. You got me thinking. I mean, it's like I know we're all very different people. We all have our own interests, our own tastes. But so what I'm picking up from what you're saying is yeah, there's these 100 diets out there, but we really need to not hone in on what's best for us, but test the waters all around, figure out what is most effective for our bodies because it is so different person to person. Am I understanding that right?
I love what you're saying. Yes, the word that I use is personalization, right? And
Okay,
so,
yep.
and you really can't personalize unless you are aware of what things do to you. And so when I tell people like, hey, you got to increase your protein, they're like, oh yeah, I've heard that before, but like, I don't know, I've done it a couple times and then I felt constipated or whatever it is. And so it's like, okay, cool, well, then maybe high protein is not good for you, but have you tried high fat? And they're like, no, fat's bad for, you know what I mean? Fat makes me fat. And I'm
Right,
like,
right.
no. Like, and so the people who do like, do these deep dives into their nutrition and try things that like they have these suppositions about or these preconceived notions about, and then they have a whole different experience. Now all of a sudden we're learning, right? And it doesn't mean that you have to be a religious keto person the rest of your life, but it does mean that like maybe if you benefit from it, you could benefit from having more fat in your diet every day. You know what I mean? Like it's these little
Yeah.
baby steps that we can take from these deep dives, you know what I mean, in the short term, that I think you can play around with both. You don't have to just do the little steps and you don't have to just do the radical things, but you can do it both ways and kind of see what works best for you. I think I'm a fan of everything. I'm not against anything. What I think is important is that people find what's in alignment with themselves because everybody is so different genetically, food preference wise, metabolically, so many things. And so if you find what's right for you, then you're in alignment and that's what works. And I gotta tell you across the board, Michael, like I've had people who do high carb diets and it works great. I've had people who do keto and it works great. I mean, it just matters about you and what feels good to you. And once we find those things, now all of a sudden we're rocking and rolling with like momentum and alignment and this progress that we've been searching for because we've done the work to discover ourselves.
Right. Which is so important because I mean, I've always heard how food impacts our thinking, and I've never been able to wrap my head around that. I'm like, all right, you eat more nuts. I read it in some Hindu book that you eat the nuts and they're less genetic code in the nuts because it doesn't have all this lived experience. And it's like, okay, this isn't giving me the information I am looking for. But I've always been fascinated by the concept. And I know so many people right now who are working on dieting and there's such a struggle. I know I have one person in my life who I care about, a family member who's been trying all these different diets, struggling. She's missing the exercise piece, which I think has always been what I've wondered for. But it's just like, what if people are trying a bunch of different things, what would you recommend them they do to try to hone in more effectively?
I love it.
Is there any type of test we could get, or
we can use our own internal test, right? And so let's talk a little bit about cortisol for a second. I don't know if everybody's familiar with cortisol, so I'll do a brief explanation. Cortisol is our stress hormone, right? And it's fascinating because it's released in a lot of different ways. When we think crazy thoughts like, gee, I'm stressed about my family member who's overweight, right? Like we have these thoughts that are in our consciousness, but they're not physical manifestation, right? They're not, but it's interesting because we have these thoughts in our medulla oblongata, and then they go down into our spinal cord and our brainstem, where cortisol is released right via our pineal gland and our kidneys. And so what happens is all of a sudden we have this physical manifestation of this chemical compound that's in our bloodstream, cortisol, a stress hormone, right? And our stress hormone is there to help us survive. When we're running away from a saber-toothed tiger and we don't want to think, gee, I'm hungry, that's good because it shuts down our hunger pathways. And we don't want to think, I have to go pee because like I'm running for the saber-toothed tiger, from the saber-toothed tiger. And so it shuts down all of our body processes, digestive, urinary, all these things, and it increases our heart rate.
Yeah.
All these different reactions, right? It's a whole systemic thing to have cortisol.
Well, and just to add for the audiences, I mean, we talk often about the nervous system and regulation and survival mode, and I mean, what you're talking about is the exact hormone. Is cortisol a hormone?
Yes. Yeah. Fight or
That
flight.
is it is exactly what is released in our system that puts us into these states of insecurity that trigger these responses within us that all the work we talk about, cortisol is the thing in your body that initiates all of it. So I just got to throw that out there to the audience.
I love so much that you did that because I think it's so interesting. People don't realize they're in fight or flight mode. They just like have a cup of coffee and they go to work and then they get mad at people at traffic and then they come home and they're just in this hypertensive state. And if you've ever had like manual lymphatic drainage or yoga or meditation or something that will like instantly get you out of that fight or flight mode to have your adrenals finally relax, your cortisol release, your lymphatic system flush, it's like night and day. And so it's interesting because cortisol is a very harsh chemical in the body. It does actually, like it starts in the gut, right? Like our gut's kind of our first line of defense. And so when we have stress, it interacts with our gut because the cortisol is in our bloodstream and our enteric nervous system and our intestines are all connected with our bloodstream. And so it alters our microbiome. Our microbiome are the hundreds of trillions of bacteria that live in our gut that regulate 90% of our immune system. It regulates our mental health. It regulates, everything because it's these living, breathing beings that are fermenting our food, digesting our vitamins, turning them into things that we can actually absorb and utilize in the body. And so when we mess with that by just having these stressful thoughts, the first line of defense is our gut. And so what happens is we experience this thing called gut microbiome dysbiosis. Dysbiosis just means we have too much of the bad stuff growing and living in places they shouldn't be and not enough of the good stuff helping us out to absorb those nutrients and keep the toxins out. And so now all of a sudden we have this entire environment, our whole body dysfunctioning because we have these stressful thoughts. Stress is, in my opinion, the number one killer in this country. It's not even close to me in America, but there are good things.
I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah. And so the good news is that there are things that we can do in our lives like exercise, meditation, coloring books, yoga, whatever it is to regulate, but we just don't regulate enough. And so nutrition can play a huge role in that. It's interesting. Carbs can lower cortisol, but in the long term, if we have excessive carbohydrate, they can actually spike up your cortisol. If you're a very active individual and you're burning primarily carbs for energy, because that's what happens when you are in states of intensity that is like on a scale of 1 to 10, 8 or higher, you're burning primarily carbs. And if you're not eating carbs, then what can happen sometimes, especially with women, because our estrogen responds differently to cortisol than men's testosterone, we can plummet. Men will actually see a spike in testosterone in the short term with cortisol, but in the long term, testosterone plummets. So we have to be really mindful of the hormonal effects that cortisol has on both men and women's bodies because it's a very different approach. Women actually tend to see higher levels of estrogen in their in their follicular phase while they're ovulating, and so they can actually handle more cortisol then. But when they have their period and their estrogen falls, very small threshold and low tolerance for cortisol. So women are more cyclical, men are more stagnant. But at the end of the day, the research is the same. Chronic cortisol leads to inflammation and overall degradation of the body.
Yeah. There was a book I read this year called, is it When the Body Says No? It was by Gabor Mate, and it's about how stress stores in the body. And this has been a big thought I've had about cortisol. And I talk about on here, our emotions are like energy. It's we don't discharge them. We just have battery acid accumulating in us. And I've always perceived it as cortisol that is just stagnant within our bodies. And that's one of the reasons like so many people struggle with dissociation and health issues. And I had indigestion issues for years and years and years, and as I've started practicing mindfulness and meditation, my digestion has gotten so much better. My blood pressure, my heart rate has gone down dramatically. And it just ties right into what you're saying about cortisol and how much it influences our daily lives when it's present and activated.
Now, let me bring this full circle for you because you asked about diets originally, and I kind of went off in this crazy tangent about cortisol. But can you imagine, and maybe everybody here can, a time where you were like, I'm going to restrict sugar. I'm gonna stop eating sugar and I'm gonna not eat sugar. I'm gonna avoid sugar completely. And what do you think about all day? You think about the sugar because like it's the law of attraction. You want to like, intentionally not think about something. It's the same thing as thinking about something. And now all of a sudden it's valuable and it's like rare and it's like, you know,
Yep.
some people even think it's undeserved, and it's like, whoa, 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 wait, like this is just a food, right? And so then we place this weird value on food, and we obsess about it, and we create this cortisol situation. Now we have to eat the broccoli, right? And so we're sitting there eating our broccoli, and we're stressed out. We've got cortisol because we're restricting the ice cream that we really want, and we're eating our broccoli, and now all of a sudden our digestion's impaired because we're in fight or flight mode, and we're malabsorbing the nutrients. And it's almost as if, like, if you had just eaten the ice cream, maybe your body wouldn't have been in such a stressed state, because like you're seeing these like unfavorable experiences and yeah, when you eat the broccoli. So it's about finding, alignment with all foods and balance, right? And reasonability, I think, because once people find that and they don't feel like they're being so bad or so good by having a food or whatever, then all of a sudden your body kind of just receives food differently. Yeah.
Right. No, that makes so much sense though. And I've never heard this concept anywhere, but it makes so much sense. So, I mean, again, this ties into your concept of alignment and how we need to find diets that align with us so we don't have that resistance. We don't have that pink elephant that we start focusing on. The pink elephant analogy is just, you're told not to think about a pink elephant, you're going to have a pink elephant in your mind.
Exactly, right? There are good things that I love teaching people about meditation, and I tell people like, don't think about the chapstick. And if I tell you don't think about the chapstick, you think about the chapstick, because so it's kind of like lifting weights, you know what I mean? We think about the chapstick, it's a 5-pound weight, it's not a very heavy weight, and then we let it go. And then like we, it'll come back to our mind, and then we let it go. And then, like we play these reps with our chapstick and it's important to do that, you know what I mean? Before you go to bed, maybe you think about like the coffee that you spilled on your shirt, but it was a black shirt, so you can let that go. And other 5-pound weights, and because what happens eventually is we get these 50-pound weights, like my spouse is yelling at me for something that I have talked to her about 10,000 times and she's pissing me off, and now we have to learn to let those things go too. Otherwise we keep that stress and that cortisol in our system, and so if we don't learn to let things go in life, like it can really really disserve us. So I really like mindfulness meditation and learning how to let go, because we're training those neural pathways, you know what I mean? We're training the pathways of the let going to like actually work for us in favor of us. So good. I'm so glad you brought
No, yeah, well, I mean, we've done an episode on letting go, and we did an episode actually just a few back on expectations and how expectations are one of the most destructive things in our lives. It's those silent expectations that we have on other people to treat us a certain way, to act a certain way, and it's this secret desire for control. But it's no, I love how you said that, because the people I'm thinking about that struggle so much with dieting and losing weight, they got all the weights on them. They struggle so much taking off any weight, as far as, because to a lot of people, it's I learn when someone hurts me, I'm going to carry that with me so I don't forget.
Yeah, it's a safety
And
mechanism, right? It's a protective mechanism so we
yeah,
don't get hurt again. But why are you getting hurt in the first place? Can we get to a place where our expectations of others are zero, right? Like, because
yeah,
really, when we don't expect it from others and we provide for ourselves, I'm really into this idea of like self-love, providing 100%, because if we can do that for ourselves, then we can let go of all expectations of other people, and when people don't meet our desires or what we want, it's okay because we could just provide that for ourselves.
yeah. No, I'm a big advocate for radical acceptance, and it's just the more we can accept what we have control over, which is such a small amount. It is ourselves and our actions. It's virtually what it comes down to. We can't control our kids. We can't control our animals. We can't control traffic or our job. Things will happen in our lives, but the more we release the need for that, the more we can get in alignment with just the things that we have control over, the more energy and bandwidth we open up to creating a life of abundance and a life of fulfillment. Because without those expectations, we don't have things that let us down in life. That's not really the best way to phrase it, but
No, I believe you. And I think that honestly, if like I believe that we are creatures of, like we're energetic beings, right? And I
yeah,
really believe in the law of attraction. I really believe that if we want to be successful in life and we think about that and we radiate that energy, like the universe will come and match it. And so if we want to have a life of fulfillment and goodness and abundance and well-being and things coming and flowing into us, if we can just get out of the way of any resistance or
yeah.
fear or expectations that we have of that, it's going gonna come to you. You know what I mean? I just think that
Yeah.
we are the person that kind of creates those barriers of like expectation or fear or whatever. And that's actually what gets in the way of it just coming to us freely and flowing. So I really do think that we can have those things. It just is a matter of us getting out of our own way.
Yeah, well, and realistically, I mean, I firmly believe the universe, even if we want something profusely, a dream job, a dream career, if we surrender that dream to the universe, it won't just give us that dream, it'll give us something so much better.
Wow.
My life coach gave me this analogy that has stuck with me about the law of attraction. It's like baking a cake. You get the ingredients together, you prepare it all up, you put it in the oven, you don't watch the oven, you let it bake.
I love that. I love that so much. It's beautiful. Yes, yes, yes. Because I mean, honestly, if you really do trust in the universe to give you what you need in life, to tell the universe over and over again is just like kind of being redundant. They're like, yeah, I know, like we're working on it. I wanted so badly, 6 months ago for my private practice that I was involved in as a director to work. And I had done so much work, Michael. I had dreamed so hard. I had let go so hard. I just didn't know what it was that was in the way of me being successful with this business. And then I finally realized, like, this isn't my business. Like, why am I doing all of this stuff for a company that's not even mine? And so for some people, they can do that and they're so successful. For me, I wanted to know that what I was pouring my heart into was genuine and authentic. And there was a specific time where somebody from my company had posted a nutrition blog that was not a nutritionist. And they wrote in the blog that sodium causes disease. And like for those of you who know, like salt does not cause disease. It's delicious and it can be very addictive if you put it on other things. It can, lead to association of, you know what I mean? Like French fries are addictive. At the end of the
No.
day, sodium doesn't cause disease. It's what makes our heart pump. It's what makes our muscles contract. Like salt's really good for us. And like most people I work with don't get enough salt. And so I had started to see the disconnect, right? From like what I really wanted it, what I envisioned to be like the successful private practice into something that was getting absorbed into the system. And so I think at the end of the day, even though I wanted it so badly, I think what the universe knew that I didn't was that like it wasn't ever going to be something that like I envisioned it to be. And so then all of a sudden like things happened and my private practice was just mine again. And now all of a sudden everything that I wanted it to be was it again. And so it ended up happening, right? I finally got out of my way enough so that I could have everything I wanted. But it wasn't just exactly in the way that I thought it would happen. You know what I mean? That's okay. Like I
Right.
don't need that. I don't need this. I just wanted it to happen. And so how it happens is not always in our expectation. And if we can get out of our way of our expectations of what we think it's going to be, the universe has a lot more intelligence than we do, and it knows a lot more things than we do. So it's a trust thing, right? It's a huge trust thing.
Yeah, no, that's so beautiful. And it's exactly what we were just talking about, right? It's letting go of those expectations and letting the universe do the work, and you're going to get something probably even greater. I mean, it sounds like I mean, how long have you had this private practice for?
Gosh, thank God I had a brilliant coach, who told me to build my own business 8 years ago before I started any of this. And so because I have my own business, I've been doing it for 8 years. And so it's interesting because, I built it, but then it kind of like got, absorbed and put on the back burner. And just in the past couple of months, I've been rebuilding it and redreaming and re-envisioning it. I've been so busy. I've been, so grateful for how many physicians that I've been, building relationships with over the years, and physical therapists and professionals who just, know me and think of me recently. I usually, bring them some cookies, and they're healthy cookies, of course. But I think building those relationships has been really a wonderful thing. And there's so much support behind me. I feel it. So I'm so grateful that like it's been 8 years, but it's actually been 2, but it's actually been 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and it's beautiful. I mean, you can just see the passion you have for this business, for what you're trying to create here. You can feel it from you as you were describing that. And that is so profound and beautiful, because I think a lot of people who want to be entrepreneurs, who want to start their own things, they're doing it for the money, and they throw themselves in it half-heartedly. No attachment, no real passion involved with it. Like, I know I'm a big believer in the spheres of intelligence, that we are all hyper intelligent in one or two areas, and we just got to figure out what those are. And when we can latch on to that, we can get into flow state so easy when pursuing these dreams, and that is exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. I love the flow state. Force versus flow is a huge thing of mine. And I think the passion comes from seeing people, like over the years have said, Jenna, you changed my life. And I haven't really changed anybody's life. They've changed their own, and they've attracted to place where they knew they could find the right answers. And so to just witness, you know what I mean, victory and summits, right? Like the summit of your health. Like, and we have, you know, we go up and down, but like to witness those times where people have these breakthroughs and they really get to heal. Healing is so fun. I love seeing people heal. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And so if you get into the right environment with the right momentum, right, and you have to be the change you want to see in the world, like, right, I'm still practicing so many things, feng shui, like making sure my energy is good in my house, and then, you know, moving my body and climbing mountains and meal prepping and eating healthy. Like we practice these things, and then we attract people who also are doing these things, and then they see their success. So it's this cohesive, you know, collective, energetic way of really driving our energy into a place that feels good with nutrition, that we build a good relationship with food, that we see success because it's easy, because we've let go of the resistance around our food problems. So I hope that makes sense. It does to me, and hopefully it resounds with
Well, I
people.
think it does. I mean, it's the magnetism, right? It's the more we try to live authentically, which is something I'm very passionate about. The more authentic we can get with our lives, the more we're going to attract situations, people, and everything into our life that aligns with that vibration, with that authenticity. And I mean, the healing journey is become my greatest passion, because once you start getting to that gold, you start realizing what's underneath the surface, these masks you've been parading in your whole life. You start realizing the beauty that's underneath, and it's the most profound discovery you'll ever have in your life. I truly believe that.
I love that. That's beautiful, Michael. I think for me, it was, at least in my situation, it was a matter of trust, right? And learning how to
Yeah.
trust the universe, because I came from, you know, a place where like there, you know, like trust was not always solid. And so I had to ask myself, like, how do I trust? I don't know how to trust. I want to learn how to trust. I want to trust, you know what I mean? And sure enough, the universe provided me with experiences that were like, oh my gosh, I trust this more than anything. You know what I mean? I feel the trust. I experience the trust. I see the trust. I live the trust. And it comes to you because of that law of attraction. It's so such a beautiful thing, and so great that we can pull in what we need to get those affirmations whenever we need them. So yeah, I love it. It's exciting to talk about.
Oh my god, that's such a cool story though. Like, so what was the first step of you releasing that control, just surrendering to the universe, that letting go, right? To just trust that things will work out. What did it look like as you started getting into this? Because we talk about it a lot on here, and we show it a little bit by doing our podcast. I know Justin, who's usually on here with me, he's really contemplating jumping into this full force, full time. And it's like, I got that fear. I'm like, I don't know. I like having a steady income and all these things. And
Right.
it's like, whew.
Well,
But
it's funny you asked this question, because I mean, like, if you had asked me, you know, 4 months ago, like, could you run your own private practice? I'd be like, no, 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 no. Like, I need a CEO, I need an investor, I need all of these things, right? And I need everything, you know, to help me. I can't do it on my own. And that's how I got, you know, that's why I worked with the company in the first place and became a director of operations in the first place. But I gotta tell you, Michael, and this is, you know, a little off topic, but I hope it all relates, because I had this realization that, like, you know, we live in a very hyper masculine country when it comes to business, when
yes,
it comes to school, when it comes to finances and achieving. I mean, our society as a whole is very masculine. And we
yes.
don't have these feminine lifestyles to balance it like they do in other countries. And so being a director of operations, president of the nutrition club, you know, a daughter of two physicians, I was very, you know, type A, very hyper masculine, let's call it programmed. And so coming to the realization that, like, you know, actually what happened is I had a huge health incident. I had mast cell activation. I had a parasite from, I think, the Amazon rainforest when I went down there, and I started breaking out in hives anytime I'd get stressed from work, and I didn't know what it was, and came to find out I had this parasite and mast cell activation. I'd get hives anytime I had this stress. And so I went through adrenal fatigue, and I could barely lift a pencil. I was so weak. And just realizing that, like, I was in such a vulnerable state, and that my very unbalanced career being a director of operations for a nationwide medical practice was dragging my adrenal system into the ground. And so what I had to do is I had to kind of reunite with my feminine energy. And I had to kind of look at my business and say, I don't want to keep working in an environment where I'm squeezing myself dry in a place that I'm so passionate about. I don't want to damage my passion and my love for my career just for the sake of getting the job done at the end of the day. And
Oh,
so,
preach it.
whoo, it was a hard lesson to learn. It took years of intentional reprogramming. I mean, I didn't know I had a feminine energy. I thought I was just born that way, and I just wasn't born that way. And so I had to kind of reunite with this piece of myself that really required me to be soft around my business and be patient and give it time, And now I only act out of genuine, true love and excitement to do something. I don't do it because I have to. And when you take that pressure away, you take the resistance away. And now all of a sudden people are flocking in because I was providing better service to my clients. I was following up with them more quickly. I was getting more reviews. I was getting more referrals. And I was like, what is this difference? And it was just me taking away the stress that I had from being in this hyper masculine culture with business. And so what made me trust was getting thrown into it. I got pushed out of the nest for sure. And I had to just like be there, right? And just be in my natural state for a second. You know what I mean? And once I was, and I saw the reactions and how much better they were from people versus me being, stressed out director of operations, Jenna, but true, just Jenna in her own state of Summit Performance Nutrition as her own business. I realized, okay, like I can trust this little gear in my brain because there's no resistance getting in the way now. So I hope that makes sense and helps people. I don't know if it's applicable, but really sometimes you do have to get pushed out of the nest to
Yeah.
learn that you can trust. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the work I do center around helping people going through the dark night of the soul, and I believe it's that whole like you can't meet people deeper than they've met themselves. When you get into that dark place, that's when you're plunged deeper into that abyss than you ever knew existed, and that's when you can really meet people and help empower them to transform their lives. And so, I mean, just like what you're talking about, getting kicked from the nest. One thing I want to touch on that you brought up, and I see this everywhere because, again, hypermasculinity is something that is plaguing this country, and I see it with so many different women where they're trying to either fall really heavily on the hyper masculine side or they're too far in the feminine caretaker. Like, I'm going to shift down. I believe there's a balance that needs to be had. But how did you go from being, I mean, obviously your story, everything you went through started you on this journey. But what advice would you have for women who are stuck in this overproductive, hyper masculine style of living? How can they start tapping into their feminine?
Wow, I love that question so much, Michael. You have no idea. For me, it was a slow process. I had to go through the adrenal fatigue multiple times. I think, from a nutrition perspective, right? Like we can look at herbs. I'm obsessed with adaptogens, and for those of you that don't know what adaptogens are, they're herbs that help your body adapt to stress. They're plant medicines, right? And then it's not a psychedelic thing. It's actually just like, it's like ashwagandha. You can take it as a gummy or a capsule or a tea or a tincture in the morning, and it helps regulate your stress during the day, or you take it at night to help you sleep. I'm a big fan of rhodiola and eleuthero root, the tinctures in particular. And so like, because when you take coffee like first thing in the morning without anything else in your system, you're essentially giving yourself a cortisol bomb, right? Yeah, I know. Guilty.
Yeah.
I've been there, right? I've been there in that very, very, very high cortisol state where I need to perform. I get it, but I don't ever anymore take caffeine without taking an adaptogen with it because that helps me regulate my cortisol. So, I mean, adrenal regulation is the answer to your question. How you do it is up to you. I mean, for me, since I work from home, there were times where 5 times a day I would just go outside and water my garden or smell my flowers in my yard or just sit in the sunshine in my hammock chair, on my sofa on the back porch. Like I think just like getting away from the computer. I know that we're more productive when we don't take breaks, but like, is productivity the goal or is like health the goal? Like, I think we can
Yeah.
find a balance. We can find a balance. We don't have to have just one or the other, but like when we only have this disimbalance against productivity and not with our own health, it's kind of like we're putting everybody first before ourselves. I call it mom syndrome because moms love their family so much. They take care of their children, they take care of their spouse, but they don't put themselves first. And so at the end of the day, they're squeezed dry. And now they're, eating out of stress and all these symptoms that create problems. So we have to take care of ourselves first. We have to in any situation, whether it be family, business, relationships, because once we take care of ourselves, we can take better care of each other. And so once we
Yeah.
do that and we regulate, then we have a better experience overall.
Yeah, I mean that was one of the hardest things I had to learn in relationships. Is like I always was one of those. Let me prioritize everybody else's needs. If everyone's happy, I'm happy.
Caregiver.
And it's like that is not a way to go about relationships because if you don't put your needs first, one, that's not going to be great mirroring for your children. But two, I mean, it is so vital to put your needs first. That way you can give yourself what you need and be in a place of homeostasis for the most part where life is as cohesive as it can be because if you don't prioritize yourself, you're going to slowly lose yourself to everything else.
I love that way you put that. And you're so right. It's so true. And I've seen it in women who are, in their 30s. I've seen it in women who are in their 80s, right? Like they put everybody else before themselves and they end up coming to me with a lot of health issues because they haven't taken care of themselves. They've always put each other first, and then they're in these stuck in these patterns that they've done for the past 40 years. And it takes a lot of work to get out of those sometimes because you've created such a momentum in one way, but you can get out of it at any time. It's just a matter of being willing to take care of yourself first and foremost every single day for the rest of your life.
Neuroplasticity, it's a real thing. I mean, it's like they talk about you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but everyone can learn. It's all about those neural pathways. You might have some deep ones in there, but you can start building those new ones. And it doesn't take a lot of work compared to how long you've built those to really hammer in some effective behavior changes.
Yeah, yeah, and you know, to be the devil's advocate for a second, like you know, I've been known to say to people, hey, if you don't like broccoli, like what's stopping you from like putting some cheese sauce on it? You know what I mean? Because if you put the dopamine on the good things, you know what I mean, you can train yourself to
You
like
know,
more things that are new. It doesn't have to be this demon thing. Like we can use these flavor enhancers, these pleasure creators as tools. It's just when we put it on, you know, cheese and bread and French fries that it becomes, you know, not productive, not intentional.
right.
So, I mean,
Or we overdo it.
yeah, yeah. So,
Well,
so
I'll be
go
I
ahead.
was
Go
in
ahead.
boot camp. I started gaining weight in boot camp. I was in the Navy, so like it was they told us straight up, you're either going to leave here smarter or you're going to leave here stronger. And it's like, okay, cool. And we came out smarter. But I have a salad every day, but I would coat that with meats, which had tons of preservatives because it was boot camp food, tons of dressing, and man, I weighed more leaving boot camp than I did any other time in my life up until that.
Wow. Well, I mean, under that much stress at boot camp, no wonder you're going toward the dopamine to lower your cortisol, right?
Yeah, as we learned earlier, I'm sure that played a part in it. Like, you blew my mind with that. I still can't stop thinking about just how much cortisol can impact so many practices in our lives that restrict the benefits we get from it, from nutrition to exercise to just meditation and mindfulness. I mean, cortisol is it's not destructive, it's a very useful hormone for what it's designed to do. I love how you gave the saber tooth that analogy because it's like gazelles and geese, they get in a fight, they run away from a predator, they go and convulse and shake, and then they go back to grazing and living life like nothing ever happened. And we don't do that as people.
Well, Michael, we used to before we had technology, before we had, you know, our American society and business system and go, 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 go. I think, you know, eventually what's going to have to happen is we're going to have to find this balance between like the work and the rest when it comes to business, when it comes to our lifestyles. Because if we don't, we're going to keep seeing disease and people are going to keep running away from it, right? Like we're going to see rebellion. Like I just don't think there's any way to make it work other than, hey, let's take these cortisol regulating activities and implement them in our everyday life.
Fascinating.
Show symptoms in our sociogenomics that will not be favorable as far as work productivity. So like, you know, the universe and Mother Nature are kind of regulating this whether we want it to or not. I want it to, but like we got to learn either way how to regulate our cortisol. Otherwise our bodies are going to start shutting down in ways we don't want them to.
Yeah. Well, especially with the pace people are going nowadays. I mean, everyone's after that hustle. But, I mean, balance is so important. I mean, as you talk about the productivity and rest, I mean, that's masculine and feminine energies, right? We
Mhm.
need to learn how to embrace both these energies in all of us. And, I mean, it doesn't mean male, female. It just means there are these two separate energies that ebb and flow within the universe that curate an effective life, and too much of one leads to so many problems because you can get too restful, too apathetic, you can get too nurturing and self-abandoning, but you can also get too hyper masculine, too independent, too self-centered, and too driven. And I mean, there's so much destruction on both sides. Me and my Allison, my wife, we're working on a book right now on sins and virtues and how necessary both are for fulfillment in life. And it's not saying sin is bad, but it's like you need to have a balance. You have to have a little bit of wrath to have humility, because if you don't stand up for yourself and for the things you believe in, then you're just going to be a pushover. Or, you got to have, it's good. It's okay to be gluttonous. It's good to want things. It's good to desire things, but you must have chastity as well, where you have that self-control, that temperance, that that
Ooh.
balance. So
What's the true definition behind the Hebrew word for sin? I believe it means to miss the mark. And so when we sin, we
okay,
miss the mark. It's not that we're doing evil or doing wrong. We're just like we missed the point, right? Like we didn't get the bullseye on the. But that creates a situation where we want to know what the mark is, right? Like if we're gluttonous and I encourage people to indulge if they need to indulge because there's a lesson in that that's going to ultimately get us to a place where we feel like we don't need to indulge, right? Like it's just the
yeah,
journey that we're on, you know?
that was a beautiful thing to throw in right there. Hell yeah,
Yeah, I love it. I love what you're doing with Allison. That's beautiful.
I'm gonna mark that. But oh, I don't want to go too far down that tangent, but
There's so much to talk about, like so much to since we could go toward. And we talked about cortisol. We talked about like so much about cortisol and so much about inflammation and alignment. I'm looking at your questions. So so if you don't mind, I'd like to just touch on one thing. I have a
yeah,
beautiful friend who is kind of she's an artist, she's a musician, and she just released her single. The song is called I Am the One, right? So Deepak Chopra had
okay,
this questionnaire or this Q&A with his group one time, and a woman comes up to the microphone and says, Deepak, how do I find the one? And he says, be the one. And it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And like inner being work and like self work is so important, and we talk about it all the time, but we don't really understand, I think, its capacity. We don't remember how powerful we are in our own selves. And so you had asked earlier about, like what is that realization of trust? And so if we can acknowledge that we are part of the universe and that we are extensions of source energy and that we're extensions of this eternal power and we've just kind of forgotten about it because we're living the human experiences and our mission is to remember. Her song is so beautiful. She says, to the parts of me that feel ungrounded, I ground you. To the parts of me that feel unseen, I see you. To the parts of me that feel unwanted, I want you. And to the parts of me that feel unfree, I free you. And so when we realize, oh, I know, right? It's like shivers, shivers, shivers,
oh
shivers.
my god, I need to go look this up.
Because yeah, her name's Kyra. She's beautiful. Kaira, Kyra Maestra. Her song is so beautiful. It was actually a very powerful experience she had writing the song because like it was this realization that anything that we want, we can give to ourselves. Anything that we desire, we can provide for ourselves. And I think we get so distraught because we feel unworthy, we feel undeserving, we feel unready, whatever it may be. But the thing is that we're the one getting in our own way there. You know what I mean? Like
No,
we are eternally worthy just because we exist. We are eternally capable just because we are living. And so once we come into our own personal power and we realize that we can provide everything that we need for ourselves, all we have to do is say, I am frustrated because I love sweets so much and I don't feel like I can ever get out of this cycle. Well, I want to learn how to get out of the cycle and I am capable of getting out of the cycle and I can set myself free from this cycle. And then you start attracting the things that set you free from the cycle and then you're free, right? And so
yeah,
we just have to realize that it's our own personal power. We are eternally powerful. We are eternally powerful to do anything that we want in this life, but we have to get out of our own way and then also experience what it feels like to grant ourselves permission to have these things. So I did want to throw that in there because I think that when it comes to nutrition, we get so much into this pattern of can't do it, I fail every time, but the diets are designed to fail us anyway, right? So it's not us, it's
yeah,
them. And like really what you want is you just want to have enjoyment with your food. You just want to enjoy your life. You just want to enjoy your food. And so why wouldn't you? And like don't you also enjoy some things that are quote unquote healthy and quote unquote unhealthy? Like can't we just have a balance and it be enough? I think we can. It's just a matter of coming into alignment with it, right? Instead of we get so much tension with nutrition and diet because we think we need to force it and fit it into this mold instead of just let it be and flow. But truly, like the people who see success with their nutrition in the long term when they work with me are the ones that have found resolution and excitement in what they're doing and flow versus like I'm going to force myself to eat more protein, I'm going to force myself to eat less calories, I'm going to force myself to exercise. That doesn't ever work. Like when you find the ease, the flow, the fun, the excitement, that's when nutrition starts to be easy and weight loss starts to be easy because it's not effort anymore. It's just flow.
right. Oh, that's beautiful. Have you ever read the book The Four Agreements?
Yes, I love it.
Tying right into what you're talking about here. I mean, we mention agreements all the time on here. In fact, one of the precepts of all our teachings is the 12 agreements that we have within our teachings, which is things like honor, courage, these agreements we need to make with ourselves every day because we can't call them truths, we can't call virtues, because these are things we have to wake up and agree to every day. And when it comes to the four agreements, I mean, that book really instilled in me. You talk about these core wounds we operate from, right? That's one of the first places I start with coaching clients, is to help them figure out what are the belief systems that are secretly operating their entire perspectives and self-opinions. And they're usually centered around these core wounds. And these core wounds are nothing but agreements they made with themselves at some point in time with their lives, where they embodied this belief about themselves being unworthy, that they are easy to be rejected, all these different core wounds. And the more we can start to figure out these silent agreements we make with ourselves, the more we can begin unraveling them and creating new agreements. So, for instance, the self-sacrifice. I had a really bad incident in high school where someone I loved and cared about went through a horrible situation, and I got blamed for it because I wasn't there to support them when it happened. And it was not realistic for me to have been there to support them and save them from the situation. But I carried that in my life because the emotions, when we make agreements, it's all about how strong our emotions are in that moment, which with shame, with things like that, that's when those core wounds become the agreements, because of this intense emotions we're feeling at this one moment in time. And that's when I agreed that I was going to be the savior in relationships. I started putting myself out there where it's like, I want to find people that I need to save. I need to sacrifice myself to make relationships work. And I never correlated the two until I started the healing journey. But man, the power of agreement is so profound. And when people can really wrap their heads around that, it can really help them see their ideology in a whole new light.
The power of agreement. I'm curious, like, can you unpack that a little bit for me? Like, what does that mean? What does that look like? What are you agreeing to?
So it's not necessarily consciously you believe something. It is a bone deep embodiment of a perception of yourself or the world around you that you internalize so profoundly that your entire perspective has a paradigm shift.
Sure. So you're subconsciously agreeing to something because of something that happened into your life that you like. Your perception is that this is reality when it's really just your perception.
Yeah. Well, it's the meaning. So trauma is never about what happens to us. It's the meaning we make of what happens to us.
Ooh, sure.
Yeah. So when we have something traumatic happen, it's not the event necessarily that's traumatic, but all the meaning we associate with it. And unfortunately, us as human creatures, especially children, where you're helpless and you rely on everyone else, you're going to internalize it and blame yourself for whatever this is, whether you're not getting your needs met and you're being neglected, whether your family's choosing your sibling for this very critical moment of your life. These little things that happen that we take personally and blame ourselves for. And in our adult lives, we don't think about it like, man, I remember when this happened and it was all my fault. We don't think about that. But in that moment, we made an agreement with ourselves that I am bad and that I am not worthy of love. Very often is the heart of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'll share with you a personal experience. You know, it's so funny. I grew up in a very fortunate family, but there was a short time in my life where I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. I went through this place where, you know, there was no food in the fridge, and I was, you know, very young. And I think for the rest of my childhood, there was this programming, right? Like this idea that like it's not safe to not eat. And so whenever you have food around, you eat all the food, and you make sure that like you clean the plate because you may not have a next meal. So
Yeah.
many of us go through these kind of situations in life to so much different extents, but they all lead back to the same pathways. And so, you know, whether we've been fired from a job or, you know what I mean, like in a place of low income, whether it, you know what I mean, like these things are so triggering for our very foundational Maslow's hierarchy of needs, like our foundational
Yep.
needs, right? Which is food, water, and shelter. And so if there's anything that compromises our intake of food, we feel obsessive about it. And we go through life, even though there's plenty of money, right? Like we still think, oh, there's not enough for food. There's not enough for food. And so it was coming to that realization and being like, hey, Jenna, like there's enough for, you know what I mean? Anything you want, you know what I mean? Like you can have any food you want because like you have enough to be able to afford it and provide it for yourself. And then there is like this, you know, adrenal system release, right?
Yeah.
In this like, you know, one time as a child. But they can go deep sometimes, like these karmic events. But the good news is that once we realize them, you're right. It's the agreements that we make with ourselves that like we're not safe unless we eat everything. But really, truly, like the agreement is that like you are safe and you can have anything you want anytime
Yeah.
you want, right?
No, thank you so much for sharing that too, because it ties right into exactly what I was saying. And I'm glad you brought cortisol up again, because we talk about, again, survival responses. We talk about our trauma responses, survival mode, all these things that we operate from. And again, cortisol is what gets released and puts us into these modes. And when we can go back and heal these stories we tell ourselves, when we can heal these paradigms within ourselves, cortisol releases its attachment in those modes, and you will not have that rush when you're then presented with the same situation later on.
Wow, I
You
love
won't
it.
have that mentality. So that's beautiful how you brought that full circle right there.
Yay. It's all connected, right? Just like the body, just like the
Yeah.
and everything. So, oh yeah, I love the way you put it as a story. Yeah, we have to retell our stories a different way. That's, go back and just finish the ending in a happy ever after kind of way. I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, it's like I had really bad PTSD after a lot of the things I went through the last couple years. And man, it's like anytime I'd have the memories pop up, my cortisol would supercharge. I'd go through anxiety, all these mood fluctuations. I felt my health going down. And it's like I realized I had to keep revisiting these stories. And it wasn't for the sense of I need to relive my trauma, but it's like I need to discharge the energy enough that I can then look at it from a different perspective and embody this circumstance and situation in my life in a different light, so that it no longer has the power it has over me. And I mean, that's what therapy is, right? It's all about them just being mirrors, so that we can show ourselves, our true selves, live these experiences and have proper mirroring as we process the emotions we didn't get to as a kid. Because
Right.
like not having food on the table, raging as a kid wasn't going to get you anywhere. So you didn't get to feel anger. You didn't get to feel these array of emotions that you probably felt and repressed,
Right.
because we need all these emotions. It's a compass that is very accurate. It doesn't mean we need to be reactive, but it does mean that when we start repressing these, we lose access to these parts of the compass that could really help us fall into alignment and authenticity.
Yeah, and processing of emotions, right? Like I used to explain to people like your emotions are like a story. Just to kind of use your terms. We have a beginning and a middle and an end to our emotions. And so when we have these repressed or suppressed emotions, it's like we started the story and didn't finish the ending, right? And so we have to
Yeah.
feel and experience, what is it? Mindfulness and acceptance theory. Great technique in the field of behavioral health, where people have to be, aware of their emotion and accept it, right? Like there's two parts to like a story. It's the beginning and the end. And so if you don't tell the full story, if you don't accept the emotion, right? Like you have to accept what's happened to you. And that's part of like letting go, acknowledging and letting go is this acceptance idea, after you would, mindfully are aware of it. So I think once we tell the ending of the story in a happy way, we kind of reprogram and rewrite our brain. You know what I mean? And somatics, there's so
Yeah.
many ways to do it. Somatics, I love somatics. Similar, tapping, EMDR, like all these, because the
Yep.
body's in its physical form, right? And so if we take these physical manifestations of our emotions and we use physicality to work through them and resolve them, we can do it that way too. There's lots of different ways, but I like the tapping and I like the somatics a lot for that
Yeah,
reason.
somatics I'm huge on. I got really big into, as weird as it sounds, shaking. Because with the PTSD, I had so much pent up anxiety in my system. And that's realistically was the thing I repressed as a kid the most that led me to being the adult I was. So I had tons of repressed anxiety. And so I would just lay there in bed in the winter, open the door or the window, let it get really cold. I'd start shaking, and then I would just try to like let my body just convulse. And it was so healing after I would finish those sessions, because it would just be discharging all this pent up anxiety. I love somatics. I'm a big fan.
Yay! Go us for healing so well. Wow, that's amazing.
Right?
You rock. Yeah. Here's to healing. My goodness.
Oh, I know. Again, it's my greatest passion. I want to make more people aware. Everyone is so focused on how can we fix the world from the outside in? How can I conform the world for me to feel comfortable?
Be the
Instead
change.
of let me fix the world from the inside out. Let's be the example we want to see in the world and stop trying to tell the world how it needs to be.
It's true. It's true because really, truly, here's the crazy part: is the things that bother us about the outside are really just mirrors about what bothers us inside. You know what I mean? Like you really can't.
Gil.
Not unfortunately.
Oh,
So
don't get me down on projection. I tell you what, I could go on a tangent there.
mirrors. It's all mirrors. It's all mirrors. But I'm grateful for my mirrors. I don't run from my mirrors anymore. You know what I mean? I acknowledge to be able to come into awareness. Right. That's the whole purpose of it anyway. Yeah. So
When like the song you brought up, like I'm going to attach that to the show notes. You'll have to send me the link to that,
yeah,
but
definitely.
it's so powerful. I will love the parts that were unloved. I will cherish the parts that weren't cherished. I'm butchering the lyrics, but to the point, like
Well,
that is what this work is right here. It is taking these parts we disowned. I'm a big fan of parts work and reintegrating them into their life, giving them the space to feel what they need to and the acceptance we never gave them before so we can reintegrate them.
Yes, and I'm sorry, just remembering that like we are the one that can provide anything we need for ourselves, right? When we go outside and we seek out externally in the whole world, the world's so flimsy. Like we don't really want to depend on the outside world to like heal our traumas. It'll do a poor job, but we can do a
Yeah.
really good job, right? Like we if we just allow remember our power, right? We just remember our power.
Well, like you said earlier, I mean, we're aspects of God, the universe being embodied in these things. I always look at it as every person is just a different perspective of God being placed around us. And it's just like everyone, you got to give everyone love because everyone is just another aspect of God
Yeah.
that is looking for healing and wholeness.
Yeah, of you, another aspect of you. And that's why I love being a nutritionist and dietitian and holistic practitioner and healer as well, because when I get to see people, if I remember I am love and I remember that you are me and I am you and we are everywhere. That's the lyrics. Like we are each other. And when we
Yeah.
find that eternal love for each other, we not only feel that experience and the joy when somebody heals, but like we're able to also feel that because like we are you and you are me and then we feel that joy because like we are expanding as everybody else is. So it's this beautiful love for each other that we can come to. And once you find that, I think that like if you're a practitioner that works with people, if you remember and can really embody and empower that love for humankind, for the universe and for every existence of being that is, then like you propel your practice, you propel your business, your ideas, your healing, your results, because you're in alignment again with what it is we're supposed to be doing here, and that's supporting and building each other up and finding and healing our own pieces of this world. So that.
Amen. Amen.
Right.
So, last couple questions for this interview. People who are new to dieting, I know I'm one of these people who I have struggled. I look at all these diets, I've dabbled in a few, but on the whole, they're all so daunting to me. I don't even know where to begin or where I can really gain some momentum. And you've given some great pieces of advice. I love the idea of I'm going to have broccoli, put a little cheese sauce on there to use to help make it more palatable. But what would you recommend for people who are new to dieting or wanting to start experimenting? Where's a good place to begin? What are some good steps to start taking in discovering their authentic nutrition?
Hell yeah, let's talk nutrition 101. I love this. This is like what I talk to most, I would say 95% of people when I meet with them for the first time, because unfortunately our society is like decades behind in nutrition, right? Like when I went to school to become a dietitian, it was a joke. When I, you know what I mean, got my bachelor's and, did my dietetic intern, like, nothing against, like, well, not too much against the world of dietetics, but I mean, it's very, unfortunately influenced by the food product companies, right? I unfortunately kind of crossed past the dietitian who worked for Pepsi and the conversations around like why it's okay to have ultra processed foods, but like that's not really the point because it's the ingredients you're putting in these foods, right? So
Yep.
there's like all these, unfortunately, like dirty hands in nutrition. And so it's held us back for a really long time.
Horrible things like food dyes and just how uncontrolled different food products are. It's horrifying. As I've learned more about it, it's just like, what are we doing to ourselves?
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And then unfortunately, there's so much misinformation out there because there's not really any regulation between the term nutritionist and dietitian, right? So anybody is a nutritionist. Your garbage man's a nutritionist. The mailman's a nutritionist. You're a nutritionist. I'm a nutritionist. Dietitians have to go through, now it's 8 years of schools, a bachelor's and a master's, an internship, and write for the exam. So there's more regulation there, but there's also a little bit more money and like, the food products, right? $80,000 a year is what the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics accepts from food product companies. And the Blueberry Council and the Raspberry Council don't have that much money, and so they just don't donate that much, and so there's not as much education around, whole real foods. But and so what I like to talk to people about is like how energy works, right? How fuel works, because there's really only three places that fuel can come from, that energy can come from for the human body, and that's carbs, proteins, and fats. Technically, there's a fourth, alcohol, but let's leave that one out of the equation for today. Just but so carbs, protein, and fat, like these are your macronutrients, your macros. The term macros has gotten very bro science-ized in the media, but macros are just carbs, proteins, and fats, and they're just the ways that your body can get energy. And so the reason that we have three different kinds of energy is because they behave very differently in the body. We have very fast, explosive energy, like carbs, right? Carbs are like dynamite. They take 15 minutes to 2 hours to turn into energy in your body. And so when you have fast, explosive movements, like you do if you're an athlete, running, jumping, weightlifting, skipping, rowing, climbing mountains, these are energies that burn primarily carbohydrate. But when we have anything else, you know what I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10 in our intensity of exercise, anything from like 7 to 0, like we are right now, we're burning primarily fat for energy. And fat's great. We love burning fat for energy. The average American has 63 days of fat in their body, and they can survive for 63 days on average without anything because of their fat stores. Now we talk about vitamins and minerals. It's kind of a different story, but from an energy standpoint, fat is our slow energy, and we want to be able to tap into both of these, right? But because carbs are so fast, our bodies will always prefer them for energy. They're easy, they're accessible. And so what happens is when we eat carbs, right, these fast explosive fuels, and then we sit on the sofa and watch TV, there's nowhere for that explosive energy to go. And so it's more likely to get converted into fat. Carbs are not bad, but when we eat carbs and this fast explosive movement, and then we have slow energy, those carbs get converted into fat, and like more and more of that goes into inflammation. So we don't really want to be energy inefficient when it comes to carbs. Carbs can also prevent cortisol or lower cortisol during times of exercise, but they increase cortisol during times of rest. So we just have to be really mindful of carbs and how they behave in the body. I love carbs, right? But like I try to gear them around my times where I'm exercising either 1 to 2 hours before or within 30 minutes afterward, because that's I know is going to fuel my muscles and shuttle the protein to my muscles to repair and recover.
Okay.
But so what happens is because we eat so many carbs in the society and don't burn them off in high intensity exercise, we become carbohydrate dependent. So that means that our bodies are just not really good at tapping into our fat stores because we don't use a lot of fat for energy. We're using carbs as our primary source. And the more we do this, the longer we do this, the less our metabolism knows about how to burn fat. And so that's why keto diets are so like effective in the beginning, because you don't give your body any carb, and then all of a sudden you force yourself to burn fat, and all of a sudden we have all these huge stores of fats that our bodies didn't realize we had, and now we're burning through fat. We have all these crazy energy levels because carbs are kind of like, roller coaster energy. Fat's a stable, slow 8-hour energy. So if
Oh,
carbs
wow.
take like 15 minutes, 2 hours, fats take 8, like polar opposite, very, very slow, steady energy. So we love fat, but it takes a long time for our bodies to get used to burning fat for energy unless we're eating predominantly fats and low carbohydrates. So, or exercising a lot and burning more fat in like that 6 to 7 burning zone where it's like moderate intensity. Like then all of a sudden we can press the fast forward button on burning fat. The only other energy we have is protein. Protein's kind of like a knot. So I'll use like quarter here. So knots, difficult to untie, take a lot of energy and work. And if you look at a protein molecule underneath a microscope, it looks a lot like a knot. And just like we have to untwist and untie the string, our bodies have to untie these protein molecules. And it takes a lot of time and energy and work. We actually burn 30% of the calories that we eat in protein just breaking it down. And then when we actually finally get to the point where we've untied the knot, there's only 6% of our calories come from energy and protein. So if we're eating pure protein, like think chicken breast or even more protein, like protein powder, we're gonna put 94% into our tissues and muscle, and 6%, there's six of those calories into energy. So people will drink a protein shake before they go work out, but there's no energy in that. You know what I mean? It's
Right.
really there for muscle tissue maintenance. So protein's kind of this thing that like is really good for satiety. It fills us up. I recommend, at least 40% protein when you're trying to lose weight, trying to realize what your satiety and fullness feels like, and really kill your hunger. If you're like me, my ghrelin, my hormone ghrelin, hormone was through the roof when I was younger and obese because I was eating a high carb, high fat diet. And those are both really, really high calorie and high energy. And there wasn't really anything that was like satiating me. So when I went high protein for the first time, I was like, whoa, what's this? I felt full for the first time in my life. Felt so good because the traditional American diet is usually high carb, high fat, low protein. So when we increase
Yeah.
those proteins, we can increase the fiber. Fiber is just like bulk, right? Fiber is like cardboard. It's like a bulldozer, it goes in one end, out the other. So we never really absorb fiber either. And so it provides mass and provides satiety as well. So high protein, high fiber diets, you have to be careful because they're so potent that like we can actually like not eat enough calories and slow down our metabolism. And we want our metabolism running at 85 miles an hour like an engine, right? But when we don't
Yeah.
eat enough, or when we under fuel, or we overwork out and we try and get ahead of the game with the weight loss, we can send ourselves into starvation mode. And that's just the metabolism running at 23 miles an hour, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, totally does though. Wow. So I know you can get protein from things like meat, certain plants. Like, what are some other places people can look what kind of plants could they look into? What places can we look to find more protein for our diet or healthier protein?
Yeah.
And I was big advocate for protein shakes when I was hitting the gym, but
It's a great question, Michael. And so here's where it gets kind of important. Like, not all protein is created equal, and everybody has different tolerances to different proteins. When we have food sensitivities, it's to the proteins in foods. And so some people have a ton of food sensitivities. I'm autoimmune, right? And so I've got like 20 food sensitivities. I don't tolerate pea. I don't tolerate lentils. I don't tolerate eggs. Traditionally, I didn't until I healed my gut. But so you have to be really, it's so individualized, right? That like Greek yogurt and like kefir and dairy based, especially like A2 dairy, because there's a lot of research showing that like A2 is associated with lower levels of inflammation. But I don't mind dairy in that case. But they can, like, cottage cheese can be a really good source of protein. Same thing with like Greek yogurt. Protein powders, I lean toward like the collagen ways, kind of this, do you tolerate it or not? And especially like over time, you don't want to consume the same thing over and over again, because that's again when the body becomes overwhelmed with the same protein and the immune system's kind of like, hey, we have too much of this. So the idea is you want to mix it up. So like if you're doing whey protein for, a bag, then next time maybe you do the pea protein or the hemp seed or the collagen or whatever else there is out there that you want to use. If we mix up our proteins, our body tends to not get so overwhelmed by the same thing over time. But there's been plenty of people I've worked with who just live off of chicken and rice and veggies, and then we do a food sensitivity test, and it's like turns out like your body's not a big fan of chicken right now because that's all you've eaten for years. So we got to mix it up. That's my only advice. But meat, lean dairy, seafood, chicken, collagen, eggs. Like these are kind of like where I gravitate toward for protein. You can get protein in like hemp seeds, right? Like 9 grams per 3 tablespoons. You can get it from lentils. But when you get into the plant-based proteins, you're either going to have a high fat protein or you're going to have a high carb protein. And so what does your physical activity look like? Are you, about to go for a run? Cool. Have like the lentil pasta afterwards. Are you about to like just sit at your desk all day? Maybe we look at like the pumpkin seeds and the hemp seeds and like the chia seeds and as like your source of protein during the day, like a mixed nut. You know what I mean? If you're doing plant-based. But
okay.
yeah, but we haven't even touched on the B vitamins. We haven't touched on the micronutrients that are associated with all of these things. And I don't think we're gonna have time today. But at the end of the day, like getting a variety of foods means you're getting a variety of nutrients. So the more you can mix it up, ideally you're having 30 different species of plants, whether that be fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts per week. And so that may seem overwhelming, but like if you're having a salad with like bell peppers, carrots, cilantro, lettuce, avocado, you know what I mean? Like that's 5 right there in just one meal. It's doable, right? We just have to
Yeah.
make an effort to create a variety and keep things interesting and not just be the creature of habit that we love so much. We can be the creature of habit, but let's be habitual about more of like the systems versus the specific foods. I think it's a better way to
Right,
do
no,
it.
that makes total sense, though. Man, I want to dive more into this. I think we're gonna have to just have you on again to talk more about nutrition because this is
That's why
just, I know, bend your arm behind your back.
I know, this sounds terrible. No, I love it. I love talking about nutrition. We haven't really talked about like nutrition science, and I could get so geeked out. I'm so passionate about metabolism and metabolic health and hormones as it relates to the microbiome. Like there's so many good things we could talk about, Michael. So I'd love to come back anytime you'll have me. I think it'd be wonderful.
When I really wanted to dive into hormones with you today, so we might have to have you on again soon for that because I'm so fascinated by how diet impacts hormones and what the impact of different hormones have on our systems, our thought process. Like, I'm not sure how deep you want to dive, but I have so much fascination around what this could lead to.
Yeah, well, there's so much to it, right? Like we could spend hours talking about it. I mean, we talked a little bit about how cortisol is affected by like estrogen and testosterone, and like how carbohydrates can lower or increase cortisol. But fats are like your precursor to your hormones. If you don't have enough fats, your body's not making hormones, and so you need fats. If you have chronic cortisol, your body can actually speed up the urinary excretion of your minerals like magnesium and iron and calcium. And so if you've got chronic stress, are you getting enough of your minerals? Probably not. Don't anyway. We didn't even talk about vitamin D and how that relates to your hormones. It's a hormonal vitamin. So my God, we could talk and talk and talk about all these things. It's so important. But at the end of the day, the good news is that like if you build like a whole food based diet, right? Like around like, lean, clean meats and lots of healthy fats and an abundance of vegetables and the variety, like that's a pretty good recipe for like a good foundation for most people. If you're an athlete, you might beginning to consider like adding in more starchy veggies. If you have a gut of steel and like you're willing to do like the organic, sprouted whole grains that are ancient, like teff and amaranth and more millet and sorghum, that's awesome. Like it's about what works for you. But I think at the end of the day, the foundation that I look at is like those three things. And then like your hormones can actually be promoted by that diet just. And then, it's just about managing that cortisol via carbohydrates and your activity level. And then all of a sudden you have a good balance, like a foundation, right? Like it's a good foundation and then you can add to it or to take away, as long as you've got that blueprint.
Right, right. Holy crap.
Good stuff. I'm
I
obsessed.
know, I want to look into this. I'm so curious. Like, my God.
Yeah.
So, how accurate would you say the food pyramid was? Everyone grew up with the food pyramid. Yeah, okay, that's about what I expected.
So I'll never forget this, Michael. I was required as a dietitian student to go to the big dietitian conference, and it was in Boston this year. And they have the expo, which is like all the food product companies, and they have the presentations for learning. And so the expo is probably 700 different food product companies, and the big ones have bigger tables, and the smaller ones have smaller tables. And I took a picture of it. I didn't even realize. It was like from 2018, I believe. And the big ones from the conference were Blue Bunny and Berea and Oro Wheat and Monsanto. And there was one more. There was one more that was there that was like, wow, Lay's. It was Lay's. PepsiCo Lay's. So these are all the ones that donate the most money to the dietitian conference. And these are the people who shaped the food pyramid, right? And so the food pyramid was built off of these food product companies and nutritionists who are being funded by them. And so it's not valid, right? It has no research behind it. There's nothing that supports it in the field in the field and literature of nutrition and overall health and wellness. It was a marketing scheme. And then they came out with the My Plate, which was just about the same thing. So I really don't, unfortunately, follow governmental suggestions when it comes to nutrition yet. We'll see what happens in the next couple of years if they're able to do anything. I'm not impressed yet, but I'm pretty tough to impress. So, and that's a good thing, I think. So we'll see what happens. As far as like reliable resources for nutrition, I think that even like going to a dietitian, you have to be careful, right? Because so you have to find somebody who's reliable. You have to find somebody who knows what they're talking about. Ideally, you find a board certified specialist because at least they've done the research to kind of expand their career path in sports dietetics, weight management, diabetes, whatever it may be. And just looking at their politics when it comes to nutrition and food, right? I would always, spend 15, 20 minutes on the phone with a nutritionist before I pursued working with them, asking them the right questions about what are your beliefs around X, Y, and Z. And if anything feels ugh or like ick or questionable, like that's a sign that you're not in alignment, right? And like I would just keep looking. Like you have to feel really good about a nutritionist because unfortunately, even if they have the credentials, it doesn't mean they have good politics when it comes to foods. That's my perspective and my advice. But I hope that's helpful for people. Because I think that like at the end of the day, like if we were to build a food pyramid, there'd have to be 5 billion different food pyramids for 5 billion different people.
Yeah, realistically. How do you feel about people consulting AI as far as nutrition concerns and questions? Do you think that's an accurate source, or do you think that's
Well,
still too in the new stages?
I think it can be really fun to use AI. I've built meal plans using AI just to get ideas, and I'm like, whoa, this is kind of fun. But like AI is pulling from the internet, right? And if our internet is very, very heavily influenced by big food companies, and the research, even the literature field is influenced so heavily by these food product companies, then like AI is pulling from that. You know what I mean? It's not pulling from the metabolic research from like, lipid research or from, you know what I mean? There's certain organizations that I will follow because it feels like their politics are good. The Weston Price Foundation is one of them. The Environmental Working Group is another. Like you have to find your reliable sources, and they're out there. But like you look at who they're funded by. I think that would be a good place to start.
No, that makes total sense too, because a lot of those companies, like you said, Lay's and all them, they're going to be pushing the agendas that support their products and not what supports what's best for people in their diets.
I mean, I had somebody from Blue Bunny tell me that I should be giving their ice cream to cancer patients to help them with their weight. And I'm like, you do know that sugar feeds cancer, right? Like I thought
Oh my God, that's crazy.
You think I'm stupid? I was so offended. So some of the things that people say, you know what I mean? Like to persuade dietitians at these conferences, I'm not a fan of. I don't really like the AND, but I do like the Commission on Dietetic Registration, the people who are not funded by these food product companies who are trying to do the right thing. There are many dietitians who have just kind of dismissed the AND, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, because they can't get their politics in check. And I tend to favor that environment more so.
Hell yeah. Speaks to your credibility right there, because I think that's just the truth right there. We're starting to realize more and more of these systems everything's built upon wasn't built with everyone's best interest in mind.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And the good news is that the literature is out there. Most people, most healthcare professionals, right? Even physicians don't have the time to read into the deep depths of the research so that you can find the mechanisms that are associated with these things. And so you just get these blanket statements, right? Like, that like carbs are bad, or that you need your body. Like in one time it went down the pipeline that you need 120 grams of carbs to feed your brain and spinal cord per day. And it's like, when you read the research, what that general recommendation for is in the USDA government research is that you actually need 120 grams of glucose. And most people don't know this, but like your body can actually create glucose from proteins. And so you have muscle mass. You have, I think it's like 16 days worth of muscle mass in your body versus like 63 days of fat. But those 16 days of muscle mass can essentially degrade and form amino acids that make glucose, that make the carbs that you need to feed your spinal cord. So you actually don't need carbs. They're a conditionally essential food. And there's nothing wrong with carbs. Again, I'm going to say this again because they can provide so many beautiful things for us, but your body doesn't actually need carbs to survive. It needs glucose. It needs a carb, glucose. It needs essential fatty acids, and it needs vitamins and minerals. And then, the actual energy to fuel yourself, whether that comes from carbs, proteins, or fats. So yeah, a little bit convoluted, I think. But at the same time, like when you dive into the research and when you have somebody who has a genuine curiosity for like the true mechanisms behind something, you can start to come to the truth, right? It's not just
Yeah.
opinions on either side, it's the truth. And those mechanisms are often in nutrition convoluted because of the influences that we have. So it's just one step at a time, one sorting at a time, one question at a time. I have so many people who come to me and have questions about all of these like conflicting ideas in nutrition. But when you understand the mechanisms behind them, like the true science, you come to the truth, and then you can come to your own conclusions about whether or not they're right or wrong for you.
Right. So, as far as your practice, what do you do to help people? What do people come to you for, and where do you see your practice going from here? What is your dream to build right now?
Yeah, I love that question so much because it's like I'm right in the middle of it, and it's like, well, gee, what do I want? And I think I know, and I think it's going to come and be even greater than I thought it would be in the beginning. So I have kind of four. Let's call it four general areas of practice. It all revolves around anti-inflammatory nutrition, but a big part of it is my performance nutrition. I'm a sports dietitian. I love performance nutrition. That just means food and movement, right? Like that's me working with my college athletes. That's the couple of professional athletes that I've worked with over the years, like warriors, ultra marathon runners. I love performance nutrition because it's just what we talked about with the carbs, proteins, and fats and movement. So sports nutrition is one of those elements. Gut health is another one. I love, love, love gut health. I'm working with a physician, a psychiatrist in town just recently who is very passionate about the glutamic acid, the glutamate pathways. We haven't heard a lot about this yet, maybe, but like it'll be good in mental health. But like gut health and mental health are kind of these two pillars of mine that are so related. I know, right? Let's get into it. So glutamate is this amino acid that builds up in the body, and it's toxic to the body in high concentrations. So she's been giving her patients N-acetylcysteine and glycinate, magnesium glycinate, right? Because the magnesium glycinate has the glycine and the NAC has the cysteine. And when you combine cysteine and glycine together with the excess glutamate in the body, it forms glutathione, your most abundant antioxidant in the body. And so now all of a sudden you're taking this toxic thing and turning it into something that's abundantly healing in the body. Genius woman. And so
That's insane.
I'm a big fan. If you have nothing else to talk about, like one take home is like consider NAC and magnesium bisglycinate, the glycine, before bed every night, because then it really can speed up healing in the body. We don't want to take in excess glutamate, right? But at the same time, like we can heal the mental health piece of it by the toxic amounts of glutamate that we have in the body. So we got
Well, ironically, I just ordered some magnesium glycinate today
nice, good.
because Allison's been having bad headaches, and I was doing some research, and I read that was really effective for headaches.
Yeah,
So
magnesium,
I
great.
get to have a little trial run with this. Okay.
Yay. And this is super gross and weird and random, but coffee enemas can be really good for headaches too. Um,
Fascinating. Okay.
there's so many good things for headaches, but those are the two that come to mind. And then I'm digressing again. So we got mental health, gut health, performance nutrition, and there was one more focus I had. I think it was just overall health, like diabetes and heart and just systemic well-being, right? So I work with a lot of people who have blood sugar, insulin resistance issues. I was pre-diabetic when I was obese, and it's just too many carbs and not enough fat for the movements that we have. So managing that inflammation. Inflammation is actually the primary mechanism behind insulin resistance and blood sugar. So when we control the inflammation, we control the blood sugar. And so just working with those kinds of people, it's really fun. Most people don't know this, but health insurance covers the first 3 sessions with a registered dietitian every year.
Okay.
So yeah, if you have like United Healthcare, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Aetna, TriWest, TRICARE, all those have to cover it. And so you just find a dietitian in your network and you can work with somebody and just get a good foundation, right? Like, and some people cover even more sessions depending on your diagnoses and on your plan. But the cool thing is that preventative healthcare is finally got a kind of a neck in the health insurance world, and so you can get like that we'll check in, quarterly check in with a nutritionist just to see where you're at. Because I think again, people go to a nutritionist and they think, okay, it's a one and done deal, but then they go to the personal trainer and they're the mental health therapist, and they understand it's a journey. So is nutrition. And so when you have accountability, when you have somebody working with you who's a sounding board, you can get a lot more done.
Yeah, 100%. So do you take insurance with your business?
I do. Yep. It's cool because it's virtual or in person. I have a home office in Colorado Springs. I'm also expanding into Denver, Highlands Ranch, Castle Rock with satellite locations for my offices. So yeah, I'm working with the whole whole state of Colorado right now.
Wow.
I'm also licensed in, oh my gosh, like 7 other states: Texas, Montana, Wyoming. I mean, I can work with people in Arizona, California. So there's licensure laws, but like at the same time, I'm working with a lot of different states. So I'm excited to work with people across the country. Again, it really feels good because it's so different when you're working with somebody from Texas compared to Montana. It's
Oh,
interesting.
yeah, that's incredible, though.
Yeah.
So, how
So
can people find you if they want to come and work with you?
yes, yeah. So it's super easy. At least I try to make it that way. Summitperformancenutrition.com. You can find me there. You can find me Jenna Moore RD on Instagram, Facebook. Those are probably the best ways to get a hold of me.
And we'll have the links in the show notes below. So, anyone interested, especially if you got insurance, got a link right there.
I
So, that's
appreciate it.
awesome.
Thank you.
No, thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation. I really wanted to keep going on so many of these topics. You weren't kidding, literally hours worth of stuff. So I would really like to have you back on here to talk more in depth about the hormones, about different types of the microbiome, and just ways we can start living more effectively with our nutrition. Because again, we're all about alignment on this channel too. And I've never considered nutrition being a part of alignment, especially in the ways you have brought up in this conversation, and the impacts of our own mental health and just hormonal health like cortisol, and the impacts that has on dieting and digestion and just everything. So, no,
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate it.
It's my pleasure, Michael. Thank you. It's the food is where it all starts, right? Like when we start with the fuel that turns our body into the movements and energy that we have, if we just look at there, it's like the perfect place to start. And when we put good intentions into it, we see the entire else of our cascade of life flourish because we put the work in the roots, right? So I appreciate you having me on, and I can't wait to come back and we'll talk about all these wonderful, beautiful things in more depth soon, hopefully.
Sounds like a plan. Do you got any other advice or feedback you'd like to give our listeners before we end the
I,
podcast?
I think, the only thing I want to say that I wish I could just shout from the rooftops is, you get to decide the life you want to live. And then you get to decide the nutrition you want to have. You get to decide the health that you want to have. Like it's all in your hands as long as you recognize that and take ownership of it. And so the answers are there already. You just have to go looking for them, and you have to create a good experience and desire around finally the manifestation of having them, if we can use that word here. And so I think that once we
Oh,
realize our own power, then we realize the food is easy. It's just a matter of finding it. So I hope that resonates with somebody out there.
well, thank you so much again.
My pleasure, Michael. I appreciate you so much.
Hey, right back at you.
Okay.